Howdy, this is our talk, Howdy, towards MetaDesign tools for anyone to 3D print anywhere. And 3D printing has a huge potential future impact, from helping build accessibility applications to helping communities when they suddenly need to produce many things in short notice, such as we saw during the early days of the COVID pandemic. 3D printing usually involves 3 different steps: obtaining a 3D file or design for fabrication, converting that to machine-specific code, usually in a program called a slicer, and then uploading that code to a printer to create the fabricated object. And many applications have been emerging to make 3D printing easier for many more novice users, from CAD to programs that use things like 3D scanning and AI assistance to build printable files. But 3D printing is not what you see is what you get, where it takes a lot of broader embodied and sense-making processes to know what's printable, what are the costs associated, what's the trade-offs, and it takes a lot of time working with 3D printers to understand all of this. For example, to the right, there's this comb where the thin walls to the right are thinner than the resolution of a printer, so some slicing programs, unless you tell them otherwise, will skip those walls entirely and not print them. This could be very confusing for newer users. So we're looking at mainly 3D printing services, where users can upload a file, select different configurations, and then have items shipped to them without ever actually having to touch the 3D printer itself. But in the background, there's automated assistants that help them check printability, different costs, and humans that after ordering can sort of check through that as well as consult with the humans if needed. So we saw a lot of parallels to Fisher et al.'s MetaDesign framework, where users such as passive consumers that just use 3D printed goods, power users that use 3D printers to create their own things, as well as meta designers that build the things that power users use, all work together in cultures of participation, working together to build new tools, build new processes, new ways of participating, and changing the way 3D printing can be done and making it more accessible for everyone. And they break down MetaDesign in 3 levels, which will relate to 3D printing here. Designing a design, such as the Customizer app here, you can enter in different parameters and have a printable file generated without ever having to learn actual CAD. And then designing together, which instead of looking at how people get a sort of initial foothold, looks at how people collaborate, which in 3D printing is oftentimes done in physical or virtual places such as makerspaces, fab labs, or online services. And lastly, design the in-between, where users participate in larger communities, whether it be in person or online in different social media forums, such as 3D printing website Thingiverse, where there's millions of designs people can upload and download for 3D printing for free. We talked about 3D printing and meta design. Next, we'll talk about studies, content analysis, and social media analysis, focusing on 3D printing services. And next, we look how to combine the two in a probe of 3D printing website Howdy, introducing anyone to 3D printing, and then talk about the evaluation of Howdy and conclusions in future work. We looked at 36 different online 3D printing services, coding the different features that are made apparent, at least for the automated forums where you can upload a 3D file and send it to them without talking to humans directly, and identify capabilities of each website. We also scraped comments from Thingiverse, Reddit, and 3D Printing Exchange mentioning these services, and did an open coding of these of a subset of these comments until we converged, and then validated our codebook on a sample of another set of comments. Focusing on the 3 different levels, we saw that these services help people verify printable ideas and get a start in 3D printing without having to use 3D printers to begin with, and many mentioned using them without using these services without actually touching the 3D printer. But these interfaces oftentimes are sort of inconsistent in how they ask for certain things and assume a certain level of expertise in 3D printing using terms that aren't easily known to everyone. Second level, designing together. These services oftentimes provided ways of talking with the services, either by attaching notes to an order or through chat boxes, and provided ways of checking printability and quoting different costs and supporting collaboration as a whole. But there's often a lack of transparency of how they'd help you collaborate or what these automated assistants would be checking for online. Lastly, for designing in between, these websites oftentimes give affordances for sharing different printing configurations, but we didn't really see much evidence of these being shared in these open forums, and that many users of these websites were unsure if they received a failure back if there was an issue of the service itself printing it wrong, or if it was designed they uploaded it was wrong. So that was pretty ambiguous to them. To help introduce anyone to 3D printing and to build a website to introduce anyone to 3D printing, we interviewed 5 experienced printing practitioners, most of which worked at local printing services, asking them first to generate cards about the concepts needed, and then sorting them into how they'd imagine those concepts being arranged in a website. So generally 2 layouts. One is infinite scroll organization, where all the information is on one page and stuff is sorted in different order depending on the priority. And the other was a wizard-like organization where users answer questions and create a profile, which then certain different learning pathways open up for them. We've made a hybrid layout based on this, the previous studies, as well as levels of MetaDesign. So when visiting HowDIY, users enter a single text blurb based on their interests, and then they're presented with many different questions, which are answers with different levels of MetaDesign. So first of all, looking at what to print or design, users can enter a query or receive recommendations based on their interests, based on millions of different designs off Thingiverse, not only broken down by top results, but per category, such as here, where books could be talking about furniture relating to books, or tools to help with reading in general. While hovering over design shows how to print, clicking on it shows the metadata for a given design, showing different images with a 3D file viewer, so they can view the 3D file before downloading it or sending it to the service, make sure it's exactly what they want to print. And then below, there's also guides about how to modify, how to print to different locations with automatically generated price estimates for each of these different options, as well as recommendations based on this particular design, based on both visual and textual features. Next, another level is designing the in-between, or how to print. This is presented as a library with many different online web resources. So clicking on these subcategories shows a textual blurb describing this area of 3D printing and many different websites, such as YouTube videos or other websites relating to the subject areas. Next is Design Together, or Where to Print, where users can see, okay, how would I print at a local service, how would I print online, or how would I print it with my own printer? And all these different aspects are interrelated. So going to what to print shows different options, and clicking on Consult Print Nearby Shop will go back to where to print and give you these textual fields to enter to explain your design intent. So you're not just sending the 3D file to the service, but you actually establish a better common ground saying, this is exactly what I print, this is what I plan to use it for, this is where I plan to use it. Every page on this website also has a closed domain question and answer system from social media comments related to 3D printing, so they can ask any question that's not answered by the How to Print page. So we evaluated HowDIY in the wild study with 22 newcomers to 3D printing, first giving them a questionnaire and then giving them access to HowDIY, and 2 weeks later giving them another questionnaire with some interviews. So the system was generally usable, and for the creativity support index was good as well, but highly correlated with usability, and in general supported the aspects of creativity that users valued when learning 3D printing. So with the 3 levels, design, CAD is not required. Many users say, okay, I don't need CAD to 3D print, but they still sort of want to be able to modify designs they see. So with designing together, users want to collaborate, but sometimes lack the confidence to talk with the services themselves. But they say with online services are nice because they can print what they want without judgment. And we saw different ways of communicating with services where some users say, okay, this is a picture of my broken cooler, how do I fix it with a 3D print? And the service is able to respond saying, okay, this is how you design and test something for this purpose. And designing in between, have to really know the steps of 3D printing before the study, but afterwards, almost all showed knowledge of these 3 steps, and it demystified the process of 3D printing for them, so that way they get a better foothold and communicate with others about 3D printing. So in the future, 3D printing technologies can help empower greater expression, allowing people to modify without having to learn all the details of CAD, help them integrate systems like HowDIY directly into the 3D printing hardware, as well as people's environment and software that they might use normally. In addition, these MetaDesign tools should help encourage collaboration, help people get an initial foothold talking with services, because it's pretty difficult without help. So we presented a framework for 3D printing technologies related to MetaDesign, and then people learn 3D printing while using online services, and that systems like HowDIY can help guide people to this style of learning. And intelligent tools and services can greatly broaden participation in 3D printing. Thank you.